All right, peeps. All right, all right. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. And welcome to another episode of the Prescription for Better Living podcast. As always, I'm Dr. Hernando Carter, your board certified internal medicine physician, your primary care extraordinaire. And this is the Prescription for Better Living podcast, where our goal is to discuss all things health and wellness in a hip and relatable way. Again, we want to make sure that we promote health equity, reduce healthcare disparities, and increase your awareness and knowledge on all things health and wellness. So, you know what it is today. It's a special live episode, our 10th episode. We have been releasing one episode per week, and this is our 10th week. You know, it doesn't seem like it's been that long, but then again, it does seem like it's been that long, if that makes sense. This is the Prescription for Better Living podcast. Again, a special episode. So I need you to do a few things for me. I need you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Prescription for Better Living. You can also like our Facebook page, Prescription for Better Living. I also need you to like this video. I need you to share with everyone, have them join us. I need you to scream it from the mountaintops. Hallelujah, Dr. Carter is here. So let me tell you, y'all, it has been a day. It's been a day. Um, I know yesterday was Monday, but it's been Monday 2 days in a row. It's been a very busy day. And you may notice it or you may not have noticed it that typically we pre-record our episodes and then we release them once a week, one episode a week on Wednesday. And there are several reasons why I pre-record episodes rather than doing the podcast episodes live. Number one is, surprise, surprise, I am a medical doctor, um, a very busy one with my hands in a lot of pots. I wear a lot of hats. And so, honestly, on Wednesday evening, when I release the episode, I don't know where I'm going to be or what I'm going to be doing. I know what I may plan to be doing or where I may plan to be at the time. But as is the case with my life, things rarely work out on my schedule the way I plan them. But I wanted to make sure that we show that we are consistent with this podcast because I think that in order for me to earn your trust and earn your loyalty and your viewership and your participation. Oh, today is Wednesday. Audrey Monroe said today is Wednesday. Lord have mercy. Today is Wednesday, isn't it? I said it was I said it was Tuesday. Okay. So it's been Wednesday for 3 days in a row. I mean, no, excuse me. It's been Monday for 3 days in a row. Y'all see what's going on with me here? So today is Wednesday. That's right. Because I recently released the episodes on Wednesday. Duh. Well, you see how my days have been. So Monday was a Monday, Tuesday was a Monday, and apparently Wednesday is a Monday. So Thursday is going to be a real Thursday. It's going to be Friday Eve, and it's going to be a better day. Now, what I was saying was that several reasons why I pre-record the episodes. Number one is because I want to make sure that we're consistent because my schedule is so unpredictable and so haphazard. I may, if I decided to do every episode live on Wednesday, I'm telling you that I'm going to miss some episodes just because I'm a busy doctor who wears a lot of other hats inside the medical arena and outside. What's up? What's up, Mike? How you doing? Inside and outside. So I'm trying to remain consistent because I want to make sure that I earn your trust and that I earn your viewership. And one of the ways you're going to be a consistent viewer of the podcast is if I am consistent. If I'm inconsistent in putting out episodes, then you won't be consistent with watching my episodes. So I got to make sure I'm consistent. Also, I've got to make sure that I'm always producing something, no matter how I feel, right? And so, one way to do that is to take control over the production of the content. And again, when you go live, you lose control over the production of the content. Also, I like to be able to edit things or have things edited if we need to. Like at the beginning of this live episode, when I said that today was Tuesday, and I said that I had Monday 2 days in a row, Monday, Tuesday, and yeah, today is Wednesday. I would have been able to edit that out, but hey, we live and in living color, baby. So it is what it is. Charge to my head and not my heart. But anyway, let me say again, thank you for your viewership. Thank you for your consistency. We have grown the channel from 0 followers to over 120. I think last time I looked, it was 122 subscribers, somewhere that thereabouts. So let me say thank you, thank you, thank you. I know it's not a large number of subscribers, but again, this is just our 10th episode. And so if I'm doing the math, maybe that's a little, a little shy of 10, maybe 8 or 9 subscribers per week, which I'll take. And then also, even if I don't get another subscriber, which I will, but even if I don't get another subscriber to the podcast, to the YouTube channel, there are over 100 of you out there who are rocking with me, who think enough of what I have to say and share to be here with me and to tune in and to watch each week. So let me say thank you. But let's get at the business at hand. Again, this Prescription for Better Living podcast. Hey, I want to hear your questions. If you have questions or comments, do the comments. We'll share them. I'll address them. Also, you can email us at contact@rxforbetterliving.org. That's contact@rx, the number 4, betterliving.org. And we will make sure that we address your questions. Also, if you have topics that you want us to cover in future episodes, please let us know. So we have been talking a long time about mental health, mental wellness. Recap, we talked about just the disparities in terms of how many people of color actually receive treatment for depression, anxiety, and other mental health challenges compared to the non-African American or white population. We talked about that we are diagnosed with these conditions at equal rates, but we receive treatment at less than half or about half the rate of our non-African American counterparts. We talked about because several reasons. We know that there's an access problem. Particularly, there's an access problem when you talk about accessing healthcare professionals that are culturally competent. Okay. Because truth of the matter is that people want to go to a provider who they can identify with, who they trust, and who they're comfortable with. And so if someone is not culturally competent, and you don't have to be Black to be culturally competent, but you got to be paying attention, and you have to care, right, to understand what that person's, or try to learn to understand what that person's life experiences have been, what their background is like, what their what cultural beliefs their family might have raised them with. So we talked about the access problem. We also talked about stigma, and that's one of the big things we are trying to do with this podcast when we're dealing with our mental health pieces. We're trying to reduce stigma, and we talked about the main way to reduce stigma is to normalize talking about it, and to let people know that they're not so strange, they're not so different, and they're not on their own, they're not alone. So we talked about that. Then we started actually getting into talking about what depression and anxiety are. We introduced ways to treat those or address those. We talked about therapy, and I remember I said that everybody needs a therapist. Then we talked about medications. Remember, so we had a licensed therapist on, Crystal Mullen Johnson with Strive, um, and Nurture. And then we had a board certified, triple board certified psychiatrist on, uh, Dr. Brandy Boland, Dr. B. And we talked about medications, medication management of depression, anxiety. So those are all on previous episodes. So if you missed those, that's okay. They're on the channel. Go back, watch them, like them, share them, comment on them. We then started talking about other ways you can treat depression, anxiety. We talked about the mind body connection, and we talked about the benefit of exercise when, as it relates to having improvement in depression, anxiety, or just improvement in your overall mood and reduction of stress, even if you don't have depression, anxiety. And we talked about mindfulness, and I think that was a very powerful episode. That was the last episode. So if you didn't see episode 9 when we addressed mindfulness, I encourage you to check out that episode. So that's where we are, um, and we're still kind of going on this journey for a little while longer. And for this live episode, I thought that we would talk about something that is certainly connected to mental health and your mental well-being. It can certainly bring on or worsen depression, anxiety, and that is grief. Now, when I use the term grief, I am speaking more in a clinical sense, because I've shared with you before, I'm a believer, I'm a Christian. And so, in a spiritual sense, as a Christian, grief means something totally different to me than it does when we use it in the clinical sense. So, in the clinical sense, when we talk about grief, we're really talking about bereavement, sadness that occurs from the loss of of a loved one. And there's really no set time limit in terms of how long someone experiences grief, because it hits everyone differently and everyone has a different response. So I'm using grief in the clinical sense. And I'm going to tell you why I'm specifying in the clinical sense, because I don't want you, as a believer, I'm a believer in the spiritual realm. I don't want to normalize you identifying yourself as being in grief. You can be in mourning in the spiritual biblical sense. Mourning is a period of time. It begins and then it ends. Okay. It's a time of sadness. It's a time of reflection and honoring the person, but it's finite. Okay, it ends. In the spiritual sense, grief is something totally different. Grief is not a period in time. Grief is a spirit. The Bible talks about the spirit of heaviness. the spirit of heaviness, a heaviness that can come on you and weigh you down. Remember, I said that mourning is finite, has a beginning, has an end. And in terms of what period of mourning, some people in the religious sense, they observe periods of mourning. In the cultural sense as well, they observe periods of mourning. But grieving is something different. In the spiritual sense now, grief in the spiritual sense is all consuming, it's overwhelming. It is a spirit that if you allow it to come upon you and you allow it to rest on you and you rest in it, it'll never let you go. I like, there's a show that my sister Faith got me into, started watching it on, I'm watching on Amazon Prime now, but the show is called Evil. And Evil is about a black man who's becoming a priest. He eventually becomes a priest. It's the same guy. He was a superhero. Faith helped me out. I can't remember what. I don't. Was it the? I don't think it was. Was it Black? Like he was a superhero that went all around New York, would listen to Wu-Tang Clan and beat up the bad guys. That guy. But anyway, you got him. You got some very good actors. But anyway, he's becoming a priest. He's in monastery, and he teams up with a psychologist and a scientist. And the psychologist and the scientist are skeptics. They are atheists, but they all start working for the Catholic Church in order to investigate possible demonic possession. And they would go in and they would vet these houses, these situations where people thought that their loved one or their house was possessed or haunted, and they would try to find a logical, scientific reason, the skeptics would, as to why these phenomena were occurring. And then David Acosta, who was the priest, always had the spiritual side, and so he would promote doing the exorcism, right? So this was like the investigation before the exorcism. And so, but in Evil, the show, they show different demons. And in one of the episodes, and in several episodes going forward, they showed where people were in grief. And there was see, this is why we don't go live. My phone is ringing. I don't know why my phone is ringing. Hold on. Damn telemarketers. I'm sorry. All right. None of you have my house phone, right? None of you have my house phone number. If you got my number, you got my cell phone number. If I ever give you my house phone number, that means I don't want to talk to you. But anyway, all right, we're back. So we're talking about the show Evil. And so they introduce these different demons. And so there are people in grief. One of the priests loses a fellow priest who he's very close with, is like his best friend. And this demon, this spirit of grief, just comes and rests right beside him. And there's a nun that can see in the spiritual realm, and she can see all these demons, and but no one else can except for David. He's a seer too. And so she sees this demon eating out of the priest's side. Okay. And they go and they exorcise these demons, they exorcise the demon of grief, but someone else starts grieving, and so the demon shows back up. I couldn't let it rain, Faith. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know me. I had to. Anyway. Um, so that is what the spirit of grief is like in a practical sense. It just rests on you and it can pull you down. And if you let it, it will kill you. My father had, who's now in heaven, had a really good, childhood friend, cousin of his. And this friend was very close to his own mother. His friend and his friend and his friend's mother had a very close relationship. And my father's friend died very suddenly, very unexpected. And his mother never got over it. She did not mourn. She didn't have a period of sadness that ended. She rested in grief. And you could see it gradually over time. And I'm not talking about a long period of time, maybe months to a year. You could see it pull her health down. And eventually she died. Okay. That's what grieving can do to you. That's what grief can do to you. It can have negative effects on your health. I'm sure you all have known situations where a husband and wife married for many years, and then the wife dies, and then shortly thereafter the husband dies, or vice versa, or people who've been very close together and someone dies, and then shortly after that the next person dies. That's because grief can have real negative effects and consequences on your body, on your mental health, but also your physical health. Remember, we talked about the mind body connection. And so we have to distinguish between mourning and grief. Now, am I telling you that if you try to reimagine your thinking and your understanding of this thing and not just accept grief, the concept of grief, am I telling you that you won't miss your loved one? No, I'm not telling you that. Am I telling you that you should not still love that person? No, I'm not telling you that. Am I telling you to forget that person? Absolutely not. I'm not telling you that. But what I'm telling you is that if you allow yourself to rest in grief, your life will never move forward. What does grief look like practically? The holidays come, and when the holidays come, you're dreading the holidays because you're thinking about that person, right? And rather than going to engage with your friends and your other loved ones, you isolate. You are arrested in the grief if you do that. The holidays come and your loved one had a favorite seat that they would sit in, and you keep that chair empty. You don't let the next guest sit in that chair, and you sit and you stare at that chair. Every birthday that comes around for your loved one, you go into a period of sadness and solitude on that birthday. The anniversary of the death, you never move forward with your life. You're married, and at a younger age, your spouse passes away, and you never date again. You'd rather be alone and in solitude. Your life stops. That's grief. That's not mourning. So, mourning is a period of sadness, but eventually you allow yourself to heal. My dad died June 1st, 2013, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about him. Think about him every day. I miss him every day. But eventually I had to keep moving forward in my life because there were people who needed me. My family needed me, my children, my sister, my mother, they needed me. I couldn't rest there. I had to allow myself to continue to live. There's guilt associated with that. When you've been mourning and you're starting to just allow that sadness to diminish some, and you find yourself having a good time for the first time, you laugh for the first time, you can feel some guilt because you think that your love for the person is connected to your continual sadness and mourning for the person. And that if you don't continue to have this sadness, then that means that you have stopped loving that person. And that is the farthest thing from the truth. And let me ask you this, that person loves you. Do you think they would want your life to stop? Or would they want you to have good days again, happy days again? What do you think? The Bible promises us something very unique when it comes to us experiencing loss. And it promises us the oil of joy for mourning. And then in the B part, it says the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. Heaviness translates grief. Grief will take you out. So, why am I talking about this on the Health and Wellness Podcast? Because as a physician, I see it all the time. I see, unfortunately, I've taken care of mother, father, and son gets murdered. There's a robbery, there's a drive-by shooting, innocent bystander. Unfortunately, it's happened to my patients on more than one, more than two, more than three occasions. And I see these parents existing in grief. And I see the negative effects that it has on their health. Heart problems, blood pressure problems, weight gain, diabetes from stress. If you stay in the grief too long, you can become clinically depressed, even suicidal. So you have to resist grief. Well, how do I do that, doctor? I'm glad you asked. The first thing you have to do is to make a distinction in your mind between mourning and grief. Mourning is normal, is natural, it's perfectly okay to mourn. And again, no one can really define to you how long mourning should last, right? But it's finite, meaning it has a beginning, mourning does, and it has an end where you set that aside and you start to move forward. Grief, again, on the other hand, has no end. So you got to, first of all, renew your mind, change your mind in the way you think about this, right? It's okay to be in mourning, but not be in grief. That's number one. Number two, you know where I'm going, counseling. Losing someone very close to you, whether it's a parent or a spouse, a companion, a really good friend, for doctors, it can be patients that we've taken care of for years. And you need counseling to process that loss and what you're going through in a healthy way. You need therapy, someone objective to help you navigate through that. And you should do it every time you have a significant loss. COVID-19 pandemic, healthcare providers, and doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, hell, I don't care if you were you worked in environmental services, right? Everyone had a hard time because we had not in our lifetimes experienced that amount of death ever, and in that very short period of time we saw people die, boom, 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 boom. Dr. Adrian Carter told me, we were talking during the height of the pandemic, and Dr. Adrian Carter has a, I guess, habit of, when one of her patients dies, she sends a flower, personally sends a flower to the family. And she said, at some point in time during the height of the pandemic, we were quarantined, whatever. She said, Hernando, I couldn't keep up. I had to stop sending flowers. That's how many patients she lost. Before COVID, I may have 1, 2, 3 patients die per year. At the height of the COVID pandemic, I was having 3 or more per day. That's traumatic. A lot of doctors committed suicide. A lot of nurses committed suicide. A lot of other healthcare professionals committed suicide during COVID. So grief, if you let it, it can kill you here, it can kill you here. So you got to change your thinking about it. You got to distinguish between mourning and grief, one. Two, you have to be proactive. You have to get into counseling, therapy. You got to do that. And if you're listening to me right now and you know that you are in grief, you know that loved one's been dead 5, 10, 15 years, and you cannot live your life, Every day is a struggle. Again, I'm not talking about missing them because I miss my daddy every day. But if you can't just get on with your life, you're in grief and you need some help. Medication, you may need some, even if it's for just a finite period of time, you may need some. You need a circle. You need a circle that you trust, that can help you, that when you withdraw, they can look in on you. They won't take no for an answer. They want to get you out of the house and you don't want to get out of, and I know you don't feel like getting out of the house. But you need that circle of friends that are going to get you out of the house. They won't take no for an answer. If you won't come out the house, then they'll come in the house and they'll make you get up and clean up. And let's just do something. You need that support. You need spiritual support. You need to get into a good church. We have this habit of when something bad happens or we're in trouble and we get disappointed, we run from God. But that is the time that you run to God. And you need to get a real biblical understanding of death. A biblical understanding of death. There are a lot of good books out there. My senior pastor, founding pastor of my church, Faith Chapel, did a wonderful book. And he also has a sermon series called Weep Not, Understanding Grief, Disappointment, and Loss. Because you got to renew your mind. You got to get some different thinking going on. So this was a little different than just the medical aspect, but I do think that grief and death and it doesn't have to be death, it could be any kind of loss, ending of a relationship, a divorce, or a girlfriend or a boyfriend breaks up with you, the loss of a job, losing your house, foreclosure, any kind of major loss, a loss of a pet, any kind of loss, and all this applies. So we had to address it. We had to talk about it. I didn't mean to get too preachy on you, but this is kind of a part of who I am and how I believe and what I believe. So again, this was the Prescription for Better Living podcast, where we discuss all things health and wellness in a hip and relatable way. I got to get out of here, y'all, because I got to work out. I got a session with a trainer in 9 minutes and I'm going to be late. But hey, if this episode helped you, I want you to do a few things. I need you to subscribe to the channel. I need you to like the video, comment, share the video, stand up and scream it from the mountaintops. Hallelujah. Dr. Carter is here. Until next week, Dr. Carter out.